Good morning, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And I'm broadcasting from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell. And right now it's heaven. So for those of you who are freezing your butts off, come to Scottsdale, Arizona. It's heaven. Right now it's beautiful. We have a very special show today. All the shows are special. But our guest today is Jasmine Wilson, and she's a gift officer for Turning Point USA. And for those not familiar with Turning Point USA, their founder was a man named Charlie Kirk. So this is kind of a subject near and dear to my heart because Charlie Kirk and I in Turning Point USA fought for the same. We shared the stage together and all this. Charlie Kirk and I were on the stage at Arizona State University, a Marxist organization full of communist school teachers. And the school teachers attacked us. They didn't like what we were saying. In other words, we were censored at Arizona State University because Charlie Kirk spoke about freedom, capitalism, and not being indoctrinated by the communist system of education. I say the same thing. I don't say it as strongly as he did. So he and I shared the stage. The teachers shut us down. The Arizona State Legislature found out about it, and they called a special session for the professors at Arizona State University and said, how can you shut down the freedom of speech? So the Arizona State Legislature had this huge meeting. They said the professors need to show up and explain themselves. How can they shut down Charlie Kirk and me? Also, Dennis Prager's on the schedule. Three very conservative capitalists. And guess how many of those professors showed up, even though the state legislature said, come and defend yourselves? Not one of those professors. Now, that totally fits this book here. It's called The Communist Manifesto. I recommend every teacher read this book because you're Marxists. And I don't mean you're bad people. Get me wrong. I support the freedom of economic choice. You want to be a Marxist? Good. You want to be a capitalist? Good. You want to be a poor person? Good. It's your choice. I don't really care about that. But what Marx was, this is written around 1850. Marx was an academic. And like my poor dad, academics think that if you know all the answers, you're better than people who aren't academics. So they have this superiority, inferiority complex. So the professors at Arizona State University think because we're professors, we're PhDs. Just like my poor dad. I always said PhD stands for poor, helpless, and desperate. And so when Charlie Kirk, myself, and Dennis Prager showed up at Arizona State, they shut us down. So Jasmine Wilson is a gift officer now for Turning Point USA. I'm finding out more about their organization. I attended their 2-day here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was very impressed, that Charlie Kirk has now hit the stage of martyr. John Kennedy is a martyr because he got assassinated. So is Dr. Martin Luther King. So is Jesus Christ. They're martyrs. When you get murdered for standing up for your beliefs, you become a martyr. So I wanted to check it out. So Jasmine called me. She says, come and check it out. So I spent 2 days in Arizona here with Jasmine and Turning Point USA, and I will say I was extremely impressed. It's a well-run organization. I believe they use their money wisely, and they're making a big difference to carry on the legacy of Charlie Kirk. And so with that, I'm very happy to welcome Jasmine Wilson, Turning Point USA. So Jasmine, just start with a background. How did you get involved with Charlie, and where you come from, and all this, the background?
Thank you, Robert, for having me on your show. It means a lot. Just getting straight into it. Who Jazzmin Wilson, aka me, who I am. I was very fortunate. I was raised as an Army brat. So my dad is originally from Alabama, and my mom is originally from Mexico, but raised in California. And they both decided to join the Army right out of high school. And kind of that's where I come into the picture. I'm the oldest. I have 3 younger siblings. And we spent our whole time as growing up, moving around. Uh, Very fortunate to have a stay-at-home mother who was very, nurturing and very attentive towards our education. Very mindful of how we carried ourselves, always wanting to make sure that she instilled in us, the American the standard of you work really hard for everything and you treat people the way that you want to be treated. So as I got older, I ended up attending a private college in Kansas, middle of nowhere, Atchison, not too far from Kansas City area, actually. And I didn't know what I was in school for. And that was one of the things that really, opened my eyes to, okay, I'm in school, but I don't know what it is I'm here for. And lo and behold, the only thing that made sense for me to study and actually get a degree in was political science. So that kind of worked out for me in the end. And that opened up a lot of doors for me as well. But from there, I actually graduated college, moved to Washington, D.C., worked with the political think tank there that sent me to Colorado. And that's where my journey with Turning Point begins back in 2018. So when I was in Colorado helping support conservative organizations on college campuses, I was very fortunate to be introduced to Turning Point, and they were so kind to me. I remember Brandon Schubert. He's still with Turning Point, actually. He took me under his wing. He traveled the whole state with me, and we really just made sure that Turning Point had the foundation and the support, resources, tools to make sure that they had a strong presence on college campuses. So that was the first time I was introduced to Turning Point because I really didn't know what it was or who it was. And there was, I'll never forget, at Boulder, uh, the University of Colorado Boulder, that's where Charlie had his first tour stop. And I was floored when I heard him speak. It was really nice to hear somebody that speaks the way you think. And I think especially in a college setting, I just graduated college. And even though you go to private school, you're not always necessarily around people that think in a conservative or traditional way, not all the time. But it was really wonderful to hear this young guy, he's only a couple years older than me at the time. I think Charlie and I think he's 2 years older than me. So it was really, really impressive to hear somebody around my age that is saying exactly the thing that I was raised. That's how my mom and dad raised me. That's how I think for myself. And it's like, whoa, I want this and I want it. I want to be around that. But, sometimes you make decisions in life that are not always the best decisions. So instead of staying with Turning Point, I actually went rogue and I ended up wanting to get into business. So from there, I kind of jumped ship and I ended up in Michigan. No real reason why I picked Michigan. And I did door-to-door sales for 3 years. But actually in the grand scheme, this was adding to my portfolio and building my resume because fast forward 2021, I would move back here after COVID and all that, just all the mess that COVID had brought upon us. It made sense for me to come back home in 2021. And lo and behold, full circle, I happen to be friends with the right people that introduced me to our current COO, Justin Strife, and Justin's children and my sisters. They all went to the same school and they were looking for somebody that knew, fundraising, sales kind of background. And I was looking for work at the time. And I'm like, no way that this opportunity is here for me to work with Turning Point again, but in my realm, right? So I like sales. I like closing deals. I like talking strategy. Development is fun to me. And that opportunity arose in October of 2024. So when I started back with Turning Point, I literally came in during the election season. It was fast paced. It was crazy. But the idea that I'll never forget that made me love it was all these people were trying to see how they could support Turning Point while we win the election of 2024 and make sure that Trump gets into office. And to be a part of an organization.
So let me ask you this. A lot of people don't know what Turning Point is. I mean, I didn't. When I got on stage with Charlie Kirk, I didn't know who he was. It's, basically you're campus-based at colleges, and now you're spreading into elementary schools also. But what is it? What is the philosophy or driving or the message of Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk?
Of course. So Charlie's whole concept was how do we make sure that students are being taught what students should be taught in school, right? How to think for themselves. That's the thing. You're not coming to school to be indoctrinated. You're coming to school to learn how to cultivate an idea and how to truly think for yourself. So when we look at Turning Point USA, sure, we acknowledge it for Charlie speaking and addressing, big important topics, controversial topics, right, in our day to day, and talking to these students, because a lot of these students in college at the time, specifically college, like mentioned, they're regurgitating things that the professors are saying. And like you just said, some of these professors are not the American minded mindset, right? And that is a problem, because these are the next generations to come that will continue running our country. So Charlie's idea and what it's established, what it's grown to now is this: Turning Point is a nonprofit organization that helps uphold the American Constitution in public sectors. So schools, churches, workspace. And what we started as was only working with college kids has grown now to, we're doing urban outreach. We do church outreach. Like you just mentioned, we've now gone from just college down to high school, and now we're all the way in K through 12, sectors.
So let me be a little bit clearer, because I didn't know Charlie at all. I mean, we shared the stage together. I like what he said and all this, and then he got shot. And somebody came up to me and says, "You're next." And those are the professors. Like I said, the professors did not show up for the state legislature of Arizona. They think they're above the law. But what I understood from attending the last 2 days with you guys at Turning Point here in Phoenix was you're anti-woke and you're anti-DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. You're into freedom. You don't have a political agenda except for freedom. And the freedom to choose what you want to learn, not be indoctrinated. So let me give you the difference for those who don't know the difference. I went to military school and I joined the U.S. Marine Corps. We're indoctrinated. We're educated, but we're also indoctrinated into a philosophy. Like the Marine Corps, I spent 6 years as a Marine pilot, 2 tours in Vietnam. You don't go there being a liberal. You don't go there saying, "Oh, let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya." So to get us to be pilots and fight and kill a lot of people, I just got back, when I saw you at Turning Point here in Phoenix, I just got back from Vietnam, and we didn't know why we were there. I was a Marine pilot, but we're just following orders. We were indoctrinated, not educated. So the reason I sat there listening the last couple of days with you at Turning Point is you're against the indoctrination of Marxist ideas, DEI, woke, anything that takes away our freedoms. Am I overstepping my boundary on that by saying you guys are into a freedom of thought and education, not indoctrination into a left-wing, liberal, Marxist orientation?
You hit it right on the nail right there. I mean, that is exactly what Turning Point USA is. And we are really the only organization that is speaking like this. I mean, people want to comfort an idea or make sure people's emotions and feelings are safe and sound, but we're here to speak the truth. We're the United States of America because of the idea of not woke, right? This is a culture that we preserve with standards of tradition and value. Everything that we do, there's a reason behind it, because it's been thought out to help preserve until the next generations to come. So once you start taking away these God-given freedoms, right? I mean, there's a reason we have our Constitution. There's a reason we have, the happiness, pursuit of why we have, the idea of God, family, and country. So with that, it's like, how do we make sure that, again, it's good versus evil. This is a spiritual thing, and we're aware of that. But if this is truly a spiritual good versus evil, then we have to be prepared to stand strong. And just like Charlie Kirk, some people, like, this is worth dying over. This is
Yeah.
truly worth dying over.
And so one of the reasons that I was impressed with what you guys did, you're a very well run organization, extremely well I was impressed, let me say this, with Turning Point. And Charlie would be proud of you guys. Unfortunately, he's dead. And but he stood up for what freedom is about. The
Yeah.
freedom to think what you want to think. You know, if you want to think this, think it. You want to think that, think it. You know, but it's this indoctrination into a Marxist
Yeah.
agenda.
No, you're so right. I like what you said earlier. If you want to be a Marxist, if you want to be capitalist, okay, whatever. We don't really care what you do with your day to day, but the idea is don't push that on people, right? And if somebody's going to have a conversation with you, be be educated enough to know why you believe in what you believe in, regardless of what that is, right? So I think that is a big part too. Charlie was always open to talking to people, especially he preferred talking to people that didn't agree with him, because that is how
I
that's how you
I
educate.
I didn't know him that well. Like I said, I spent a couple nights with him on stage talking, you know. And I said, this guy, as and Mexicans would say, he's got cojones, big balls. He says stuff I wouldn't say, especially we're
Right.
in a Marxist organization called Arizona State University.
Yeah.
And now I knew why those professors came at us, because they're against what he was saying. And the truth, it was Charlie's truth, but they didn't like his truth
Right.
because our academics is about indoctrination. So they charge these kids with a student loan program. And now your generation and generations below are loaded with debt.
Yeah.
I'm a debt guy. I'm a capitalist. But I wouldn't take out a student loan because it's the worst possible kind of debt. They loaded our students up with the worst kind of debt. How dare they do that? And so that's why when I sat there listening, he had a nice cocktail party, Turning Point USA, and the presentation was profound. But I like what you're doing. You're fighting the indoctrination of Marxism in our school system. So we come back, and then if you want to be a Marxist, go to school. I mean, I'm not against it, you know. But anyway, when we come back, we'll be talking more to Jasmine Wilson. She's a gifts officer of Turning Point USA, and she worked with Charlie Kirk, who, as you know, was assassinated for standing up for what he believed in. We'll be right back.
Gold is up more than 80% over the past year. The S&P, about 16%. That's not a small gap. That's a massive difference. $100,000 in gold becomes roughly $180,000. The same $100,000 in S&P, about $116,000. If your retirement account is concentrated in stocks, the difference matters. Because when gold dramatically outperforms equities, it usually means something bigger is happening. And right now, the world is getting more unstable. War in the Middle East, energy prices rising, stock markets turning violent. When uncertainty rises, smart money moves toward real assets. Major banks are already outlining gold scenarios in $6,000 to $6,300 range. Now listen, this isn't about abandoning stocks. It's about whether your IRA or 401k has exposure to the asset gaining momentum, or if you're fully dependent on equities continuing higher. My friends at Priority Gold created a free Rich Dad Wealth Defense Guide explaining exactly how physical gold or silver can be added to your IRA or 401k tax and penalty free. They handle the rollover paperwork. And with qualifying purchases, they're offering up to $10,000 in free silver. To get your free info guide, call 866-703-9895 now. That's 866-703-9895. Or open a text message and text the word guide to 24999. Or click the link in the description below.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki for State Radio Show. Good news and bad news about money. Our guest today is Jazzmin Wilson. She's the gift officer for Turning Point USA, aka Charlie Kirk's organization. And we're talking about reason she invited. FYI, I had just come back from a tour of Vietnam again, and I went to a Turning Point USA event with Jasmine in Phoenix here. And as I said, what Charlie was fighting against and what Turning Point USA fights against is this here. And I said the difference between the trouble with our education today is Marxist. So Charlie and I were attacked at Arizona State University, and they're not bad people. You can be a Marxist if you want. You can be a communist. You can be a hippie. You can do what you want to do. But the trouble is when this puts student loans attached to it, and now our students are the biggest indebted people on planet Earth, and they go to school to get indoctrinated, not educated. If you look up the definition of the word education, it says educe, to draw out of a person. Indoctrination means you feed into a person. And I know the difference is because I went to military school. I had nominations to the Naval Academy and Merchant Marine Academy and West Point. Those are my schools. I'm a military officer. We're indoctrinated. And then I joined the Marine Corps, and I'm indoctrinated to be a Marine. We're indoctrinated to fly a different. I was a pilot. I just got back from my third return trip to Vietnam to make peace. Well, what our schools are doing right now is they're indoctrinating students to be Marxists. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and what else are they indoctrinating kids on? But they're Marxist ideas. That's the problem. So I was very impressed with Turning Point USA. And I'm afraid I never got to know Charlie. I just shared the stage with him, but he got taken out. And, Jasmine, I've been warned also, keep my mouth shut, because we're going up against the academic establishment who wants students to be in debt with student loans. So we're not educating our kids, we're indoctrinating them and then loading them with student loan debt. And so now our American kids come out indoctrinated and in debt. No wonder New York now has a Marxist mayor. No wonder California has a Marxist governor, because they learned it in school. And, and then interesting too is this, there was 9/11 and Charlie Kirk was shot on 9/10. So there's so many similarities. I'm sitting there listening. I'm at Turning Point USA going, and Charlie is now a martyr. And so I want to support Jasmine's message as a gift officer for Turning Point USA, because we're fighting Marxism. We're not fighting Marxism. You want to be a Marxist, be one. You want to be Catholic, be a Catholic. You want to be a Jew, be a Jew. But don't indoctrinate people. That's what I'm upset at. So, Jasmine, what do you have to say?
No, I mean, you and I, we have great conversations back and forth. And one of the things I definitely want to highlight is right now, we're seeing a big shift within females, women in our culture. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed as well. Sure, we can highlight the education, we can go through where churches are failing, we can talk about a lot of things. But, when you look at men and women in today's culture, I think women are a big issue for us, right? I get attacked by women quite often. That we have been indoctrinated with this even culture that we live in, that, women have all these freedoms and the rights, and we can do whatever we want. And here's the thing, like you said, do whatever you want, but don't indoctrinate. And I think right now, as there's more momentum with women, women being in positions of CEOs, we have women in politics. Again, as a woman, I love being a woman, but I don't think that women, when they're working in a feminist way, I don't think we're helping preserve, the sanity of what womanhood and the future of, mothers, and even women that are in professions, right, that are professionals, should necessarily think like, because that enables this indoctrination, right? And right now, I see it quite often on college campuses. I see it within my own family. The women right now need to be reminded, that everyone has a role, and feminism, it's not a healthy part of
Yeah.
our culture
I
right now. So
understand what we're up against here is freedom. Why did I go to Vietnam twice? I fought for our freedom to choose our religion, our politics, our beliefs, our friends, our education. But when our college campuses, this started in 1930, what happened was Columbia University's Teachers College in 1930 imported Marxist teachers from Germany, and they started teaching the Columbia University's Teachers College in 1930. And right after that, that's when the riots broke out on our campuses, 4 dead in Ohio. the students started protesting against America. But that was because Columbia University's Teachers College, should look it up, invited professors from Marx-Laden Germany to teach the teachers, and all hell went loose. So when I came back from Vietnam, there was no welcome home. We were spit on, hit with eggs and all this. And that's kind of why just before I came to the event at Turning Point USA in March of this year, 2026, I had just come back from Vietnam to make peace. Because I went over there, I liked what I did. I'm a Marine. But I fought for our freedom. And that's what they did not understand, that we're Marines and military. We fight for our freedom, the freedom to think what we want to think and choose the education we want to choose. But our schools have become Marxist indoctrination camps. Now, the good thing is Charlie Kirk had the balls to do it. He stood up to him. I was so impressed with that. And your organization, I like well-run organizations. I was very impressed with Turning Point's organizational skills, because that's how you win. You're going up with a very highly sophisticated organized group called the NEA, National Education Association, the teachers union. Unions are Marxist. Just study Marx. So NEA is National Education Association. And guess what? My poor dad was the head of the teachers union. And Rich Dad hated unions. So that's where we're at. But I had a choice. Do I want to go union, or do I want to be a capitalist? And so the reason I'm a capitalist is I didn't want to join a union. And that's freedom of choice. That's all I fight for. You want to join a union? Be a Marxist? Have a good time. You can join the NEA, National Extortion Association. The biggest union, the most influential union in America is teachers. And most of them are indoctrinated as Marxists. And like I said, when the state legislature of Arizona asked the teachers to show up, the teachers went, read between the lines, man. Read between the lines. We don't have to listen to you to the laws of the land, because we're educators. That's where I'm proud of Turning Point USA for the battle you're doing.
No, thank you, Robert. And to your point, now that things are different because Charlie isn't here, the mission is still the same. One thing I love to tell people, everyone that works at Turning Point, prior to Charlie's passing, we were here because we believed in what the work, we're doing. And now that Charlie's gone, we believe in it more so than ever, right? I mean, when you're working for a person that is truly titled a martyr, it's an honor, it's a privilege. And it really does make you realize what we're up against. And I appreciate you supporting us. I appreciate you even taking the time to listen to me and get to know what Charlie and Erica Kirk and what everything that we're doing at Turning Point is. The best is yet to come. And we're out here, we're Monday through Sunday to make sure that, the indoctrination does not happen under our watch. And that I can assure anyone, Turning Point is really doing the work to make sure that we preserve our freedom.
So let me give a little bit more, history of this whole thing. Is this guy Jesus Christ? I'm not pumping Christianity, okay? I mean, I
of course.
freedom of religion. I really stay away from religion because more people have been killed in the name of God than anybody else. But anyway, a guy like Dr. Martin Luther King, he was assassinated too. But that was a fight worth fighting. I started thinking about him, because Kennedy got shot, then King got shot. And those guys stood up for their principles. And that's the dangerous part of being a man or woman of principle. You stand up for your beliefs and they take you out. So what Dr. Martin Luther King did was he fought against one of the greatest, sins, which is, we call that just racial prejudice. And I'm sensitive to that because being Japanese, we were crapped on because of Pearl Harbor. And what my family did was we went to fight in Europe. So my uncles, I had 7 uncles fight in World War II, 5 in Europe and 2 against the Japanese. But we fight for our freedoms. But to do that takes courage. So that's why I tremendous respect what Turning Point USA. You guys are very well organized from what I can see on the surface. So I'm interested in learning more about what you guys do. So Charlie, be proud of you.
Absolutely.
So any final words
Thank
there,
you,
Jasmine?
Robert. Your final words, I want to say again, thank you so much for letting me be on the show with you. And really, people are not aware of what Turning Point is. I highly recommend learn about Turning Point. We're here in Phoenix. If there's ever any opportunity that one might want to come and learn more, please come to our headquarters. We're out of South Phoenix area by South Mountain. So we're not far at all. And our doors are always welcome. We want people to understand what we're doing. And it's a massive organization. So it's not just one thing we're doing. I think I think people will be quite surprised all the layers and levels that go into operating this pretty ginormous conservative organization. So yes, that's what I could say. If you want to learn more about Turning Point USA, we want you to. And
what I liked about you, how conservative you are, is you guys are like U.S. Marines. You fought for freedom. That's what being conservative. You fight for our freedoms, and the freedom of education is a battle worth fighting for. And I commend you. I thank the whole Turning Point Organization USA, and Charlie Kirk is proud of you guys. So thank you very much, Jasmine.
Thank you, Robert. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. And we'll be right back with a final word. And thank you, Jasmine. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki for Chat Radio Show. Thanks to Jazzmin Wilson. She is a gifts officer from Turning Point USA. In other words, she was looking to me to donate money. So I'm not here endorsing Turning Point USA or Charlie Kirk, and I'm doing what I recommend people do. I'm doing my due diligence into the organization. So I haven't donated at all, and it's your choice. You want to do it. I'll leave you this message what I support. Charlie Kirk and I taught together at ARCU once, and we got attacked by the professors because most professors are Marxist. They belong to the NEA, National Education Association, which is Marxist. My poor dad was a Marxist. So if you understand that, it's freedom. You want to be a communist? Be one. You want to be a Catholic? Be one. You want to be Jewish? Be one. I fought for freedom. The trouble with is our education system has become indoctrination. It has become a battlefield for our minds. And what happens today is young kids go to school, they get loaded with student loan debt, the worst type of debt. I'm a debt guy on top of it. But worst of all is they get indoctrinated. And what I say, education is not indoctrination. Education is educe. The Latin word educe means to draw out. And what we do at Rich Dad, we draw out the rich person in you. And what it seems schools are doing is inducing to you the Marxist in you. So it's your choice. I fought for freedom. I just come back from Vietnam. I've been back to Vietnam 3 times after the war to kind of make peace. Because I went to Vietnam, I didn't know why I was there. But when I got there, I found out we had Catholics shooting Buddhists. And that's why the war was started there. Ho Chi Minh was really on America's side. But I found out the truth in Vietnam because I had to go to see there. I suggest you do the same thing. Do your best not to just take one side or the other. Go to look at both sides. As my Rich Dad often said, all coins have 3 sides: heads, tails, and the edge. Stand on the edge and look at both sides. Okay, thank you to Jazzmin Wilson, Turning Point USA, and thank you for watching Rich Dad Radio Show. Thank you.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.